No real feedback yet.
Okay.
We don't have your crystal clear tones as we usually have, though, but that's all right. As long as we have you, John.
There you go.
Nice
How was
to meet sort of in person finally, John.
Yeah, about as in person as it gets these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully things change.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what's going on with all this crazy Omicron stuff these days.
Are they talking about changing stuff in BC, Bryson?
Not. It's kind of interesting. I watch all the press releases and stuff when I get a moment, and their tone is shifting a little bit. For a long time, BC's been like really pretty proactive about like trying to do, I guess, more in like epidemiology, what you'd call like containment, like actually trying to keep numbers down.
Right.
The tone has really shifted this last week, and they're basically like, look, everybody just needs to do what you can do personally, because essentially what they're getting at is they just can't really contain it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't think nothing is majorly changing in the way of restrictions right now. We already have like, I don't really, gosh, things change so much. It's hard to keep track of exactly what is in place. We basically have reduced capacities for a lot of stuff. Like restaurants are all reduced capacity, sports events are all reduced capacity, like hockey and all that stuff. So, but I don't think much of it has changed recently.
Right. Yeah, we just went into our curfew and shutdowns of in restaurant dining. So delivery or takeout only here. So
yeah.
Evening, Kim. So we'll see where it goes.
Oh, cool. The chat actually comes up in the window here. That's fun.
Yeah. It's not a bad setup. StreamYard does a great job.
Does it aggregate it whether people are on Facebook or other ones, or
we see the comments? We just don't see the user unless they've agreed to share the user ID with StreamYard.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes we'll just get a generic Facebook user comment ID.
Got it.
Yeah. Evening, Tony. So yeah. When was the last time you went out shooting, Bryson?
I'm still going out weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of had my off season, kind of November, December. Work was really busy, and then we had, Christmas time, the family, and so. But I was still shooting weekly. So yeah, I was out on Sunday.
Nice.
Yeah, he's still just keeping the rust from shaking off.
There we go. All right, stand by. Evening, Dan. Hey, welcome to episode 38, or episode 1 of season 2 of the Rimfire Nation Podcast, proudly brought to you by Tesro.ca, your home for all your precision shooting needs. Welcome to 2022, guys. How are you guys doing?
Good.
You had a relaxing holiday. Just want to see what Tesro's got going and it just arrived. I don't think there's anything new. P9 Cadet in black is available. And the big news coming into the holiday season was that they are now stocking MDT components. And also, I believe, Loophole Mark V HD stuff. So if you are looking for MDT and Loophole Mark Vs, Tesro.ca is now your go-to place in the East, or even in Canada, because they ship everywhere across Canada.
That's cool that I saw that they were bringing in the Mark Vs. I thought that was pretty cool, because the only place I could find before that you could get them up here was like Precision Optics here in BC.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, they're pretty good at understanding where what people are looking for. So yeah. Asmir and Miriam do a great job at scratching our itches, I guess.
Or creating more itches.
Yeah. Scratching the itch of your wallet.
That's it. A lot of CRPS, ORPS, and NRS guys are allergic to money. It seems because everywhere there's a new variant that comes along. Maybe that's what it is, right? It's like CRPS is like the original COVID, except it's money that it's allergy to money that you contract. So
Yeah, it sure seems that way.
yeah, well, it's looking forward. I just saw over the holidays Ryan Christie and the new what is it? The Long Range Steel Slayers series out
Yeah.
west, which is awesome. We're going to get Ryan on in the next couple of weeks to chat about that new series. And I think they're aligned with PRS. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Precision Rifle Series. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I briefly chatted with them a little bit, and sounds like they're essentially a club within the Rockies
Okay, nice,
district of PRS.
nice.
By the sounds of it, I chatted with him a little bit this morning because I'm starting to do my match schedule for the year, and I'm looking at it like, can I make it work to go out to Saskatchewan a few times? Because then maybe I could potentially get a shot at going down to the Rocky Regional match.
That would be cool. And I just saw that Go Big Tactical jumped on as the series sponsor as well, which is awesome news. Tom does a great job at supporting shooters and the shooting sport. So if you're looking for stuff other than Tesro.ca, Go Big Tactical is a great place to start as well for stuff. They've been the go-to guys for Voodoo and Rimex over the last couple of years. So that's where we've been getting our stuff. So they seem to have a pretty good pipeline. So anyway, to the main topic, gentlemen. Bryson reached out to me, I guess, a couple of months ago. He was working on the next big thing, at least the thing that he was using, PS90 for, I guess, your way of tracking performance and improving performance. Or maybe I'll let you explain it, Bryson.
Yeah.
So what was the impetus behind that? Kind of what's the thought process that went into where you are right now?
Yeah, I think we started talking about this a little bit when you came through town in the summer in July. So yeah, I mean, basically this is it's a number, a measurement technique, really nothing more. It's a tool. I'm no training guru. I've only been doing this a couple of years, but the PS90 is just is something that I came up with to basically track my performance in my training and help me understand, am I actually improving? Is what I'm doing in training working? Is it not working? Is it and the other thing that you can use it for as well is, I mean, we can get into it a little bit down the line, but evaluating differences in different things that you want to try in training. Does it make a meaningful difference? Because these are all questions that can be maybe difficult to know how to answer if you don't know what numbers to look at. And because a lot of people, I feel like when you start out, it's like you just want to make a smaller group, right? I feel like everybody at some point just goes and punches a paper at the range and you just want to make a smaller group, right?
Yeah,
but at a certain point, you got to look at not just can you punch a smaller group, but is what you're doing useful in terms of performance for our discipline?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I made a bunch of slides and whatnot to just kind of guide me a little bit. But definitely don't let me stomp on you too much. If you guys want to say stuff or ask questions,
sure.
whatever, jump right in and stop me.
And by way of background, you started your long range rimfire addiction, I guess, a couple of years ago, right? First time we met was Campbell River, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yep, that was my first match. I started shooting. I literally just started shooting 3 years ago.
Right.
I got my PAL 3 years ago. I had shotguns a couple times as a kid, but I had no background. My family's not we don't have hunters in the family or anything like that. Right. So I just kind of started. Just something that interested me. And then for a bit, I kind of was looking into it. I was thinking oh, maybe I could do 3-gun. That looks kind of cool. and I did a little bit of shotgun training, which was fun. But then I bought myself a CZ 457, just
Royal.
like the
Yeah.
little 16-inch barrel.
Yeah.
I bought it and I was like, well, it looks like a fun gun, and like I can probably like get into small game hunting or something. And then that kind of me and my brother got into started getting into like small game hunting, and then I don't know really why or like how I found competition. Actually, I think the first competition that I really like found any info about was Ryan and Graham's stuff, Action Rifle.
Yeah.
When they were running that out at Mission.
Yeah.
And I looked into it and I was like, oh, that looks like might be fun. It's kind of close. And I remember I bought this like 6x7 steel plate, which now I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's huge, massive target. I remember me and my brother put it out. It was something silly. We put this it's like a 6-inch plate, and we put it at like just beyond like 100 meters or something. And we were like blown away that we could hit it. So it's funny how things changed. That was a couple of years ago. And then my first match was Campbell River 2020.
2020, yeah.
Actually, so
really not that long ago.
No, it goes pretty quick. So
and then we saw you again in Kamloops.
Yep.
And then this past year we connected again, and then you started talking about your methodology at seriously working at getting better and kind of moving yourself up from where you were to where you thought you wanted to get to. And then, I was interested in kind of that process that you put together. And I thought it might be interesting for other folks to, to see if something that might work for them as well. So that's kind of how you got here.
Yeah.
And awesome. So thanks for coming on. So I don't know where you want to start or what you want to.
Yeah.
If I want to show some stuff, and then John's there ready with his notepad and his pen.
Yeah, ready to interject. Sure. I'll jump right into it. I'll share my my slides here, and we'll start rolling through it. Okay. You guys got that there?
Yeah.
Awesome. This is like so basically but also, by the way, like, I mean, I love listening to just like all the chats. I listen to this podcast all the time. I put it on at the end of my day, and I remember, like, I think it was like end of last winter or something. You guys did an episode on training.
Yeah,
I think it was a while ago now, but always cool to just like I love talking about training and what people do to improve. I mean, like, that's kind of my bent personally. I love research, and I'm like a very scientific minded person. I like to quantify things and break it down. I mean, and like that's fun for me. And like kind of like John, I've got spreadsheets for everything, and so that's kind of my predisposition. So what this is this is just a system, like I said, that I came up to quantify my training. So we can talk a little bit about like what, if people are interested, like what I do for training, we can talk a little bit about that. But this wasn't really meant as much to be about that, just because, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm pretty new, and like I don't feel like I'm in as much of a position to tell people like how to train, because like I still feel like I'm so green at this.
I think everyone's green, but you managed to take your process and end up 17th for the year, which is pretty respectable out of across Canada. So it's not like you put in work that didn't result in anything material. I think what you're doing is working, and it might be interesting for folks to try it out, right? What's the worst that could happen is,
So here, let me get this. Make sure this works. Hello, nice. There we go. Awesome. I'm going to come back to this idea a little bit later, but one thing I want to put out now, because I feel like it's kind of important to put out right at the beginning, is something I really believe in. Is if you really want to improve, like if you really want to improve, you want to get better and you want to get better fast. You don't want to just be turning, money into noise, as you like to say, Rick. You have to shoot paper. There's no exceptions. You've got to shoot some paper. I'm not saying don't shoot steel. I love shooting steel. I'm going to talk about a little bit about at least my opinion on the ups and downs to paper and steel, because there's certainly a little bit of both. But I really do believe it's important if you want to improve meaningfully, you've got to shoot some paper. It really, we'll touch on it more a little further down, but it tells you a lot that shooting steel doesn't. I remember actually on an old episode, I know some other folks that have been on the podcast have said that as well. Kevin Needsweeds, I know he said that, and he's done super well. Didn't he was like top 5 last season or something?
Well, I could tell you, he's never too far down the list.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually get enough matches shot always, but if you look in the report card, he's always up at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin ended up 26th for the year with only 2 matches, which is not bad.
Yeah.
In the open division.
I know he said that on when he was on a while ago, but and then I mean the objection some people would have would be it's such a pain to scan targets and put paper out, and all I have to say to that is good. It's a pain, good. You got to put the time in. There's really no way around it, and I'm the first person to say it's a pain to shoot paper, but if you want to improve, some things got to be a little bit painful. So. Before I can get to like explaining a little bit about what the PS90 is, this number kind of quantifier that I came up with, I just wanted to do a little primer on accuracy and precision, because I feel like it's something that especially some newer folks don't know the difference between. And I'm fully giving all the credit on this to Brian Litz. These diagrams, I redrew them myself, but they did come originally from I believe it is this book here.
Long Range.
Really good read if you haven't checked it out. Brian's stuff tends to be pretty technical, but this one is probably the least technical of all the Brian Litz books, and they're really good. Accuracy and Precision for Long Range Shooting. It's a really good sort of foray into some of the more technical stuff. So anyways, credit goes to Brian on these diagrams, but it does such a good job of explaining the differences. So what's the difference between accuracy and precision? And the easiest way I think to go about explaining it is some diagrams. So this is our little fake target diagram with a few impacts on it. So this target here is neither precise or accurate. So accuracy is essentially has to do with if we take the average of all of these, wrong tool, this one, all these impacts, right? We're going to get a group center somewhere in the middle. So accuracy has basically everything to do with how far is our group from the intended point of impact, right? That essentially quantifies accuracy most of the time as we want to define it, right? So a group like this is neither precise or accurate. If we go down to the next one, this group would be accurate, but not precise. So precision, on the other hand, doesn't really have much to do with where the group falls, right? Because the group, this group is roughly, pretty close to the center. But you see that what most people, it's kind of like the easiest thing to quantify when you look, especially when you start out and you don't really know a lot about how to measure stuff or measure groups on paper. When you look at a group, you kind of just naturally see it as like, well, how big is this, right? How big is this circle that kind of encloses this group? Another way you could look at it also would be like, well, what's the distance between this and this, right? So precision is how tightly, as it applies to shooting groups, precision is basically how tightly can we cluster all of our shots together. So a group like this is accurate in that it is centered up, but it's not really very precise, right? It's still taking up half the target. So then we can get to our other two cases. So this group is precise but not accurate, right? So it's a tiny group, but it's off target. It's off the intended point of aim. This group has precision, high precision, but low accuracy. And then finally, what we all really want is a group that is precise and accurate. And that looks something like this, right? So at the end of the day, this is centered up and it's also nice and small, nice and tight. So that should give people an idea of what is the real difference between precision and accuracy, because it is important to understand, I guess, if you really want to quantify your performance, we have to look at what parts of your performance and what parts of your training play into precision and what parts play into accuracy, because they are kind of separate. They're inherently tied together, in my opinion, but they are still separate and they can be affected separately. So, is that me with the noise there?
No, that's...
That was John.
Oh, that's John. Okay. So, the requirements for accuracy and precision are discipline specific. They're different for different disciplines. And this is an important thing I kind of wrote a few of this slide kind of thinking a little bit about when I was getting into it and trying to understand what you should put time into, like where you're going to get bang for your buck, right? Because everybody wants to, we all love to buy better gear, but sometimes it's hard to know what ideally should you be like chasing. Do we really need incredibly high levels of precision? What do we need? So this stuff, this is a little bit open to interpretation, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a comparison and look at what are the different requirements for different disciplines of shooting, because you'd be remiss not to look at the fact that the requirements are different depending on what discipline you want to shoot. So bench rest, first off, I keep switching tools. Bench rest is 100% precision, right? Bench rest is only shooting tight groups. Essentially, most, or at least some disciplines of bench rest, as we know it in center fire, I think at least, they don't even necessarily measure how far the group is from the actual point of aim. Like they literally just take the calipers to the group and look at how large the group is. Doesn't really matter if it's kind of up, a little high, a little right. That doesn't really matter. What they're looking for is like, can we put every single shot through the same hole? That's just 100% precision. No, nothing to do with accuracy, right? Something like speed steel would be, and again, like I said, it's kind of it's an approximation, it's a bit of an opinion, but I think it's a good comparison. Speed steel would be mostly accuracy, 90% accuracy, and 10% precision, right? There's some precision involved because, yes, you got to be super fast, but if you're not precise enough that you can't at least still hit the steel, well, you're not going to get points, right? F class is interesting. I struggled with trying to put some numbers on this, and this is what I mean. Like this is a little bit subjective, but I think an interesting comparison. F class, I think is closer to like 40% accuracy and 60% precision. And then I did put a little caveat here. It depends on which distance, because for those of you who know, F class, they shoot different events. They'll shoot different distances. So there's like 300-yard F class, 500-yard F class. I think I don't know what the ones are after that. And then they go up to 1,000 basically. So actually what your requirements are for accuracy and precision actually change depending on the distance. And here's why. They can achieve high levels of precision because they're shooting off a rest 100% of the time, right? So they're able to essentially realize their rifles precision potential all the time. But then something that's going to come up here, we'll talk about kind of in another slide or two, is precision, but especially accuracy, is affected by wind. So the further that you go, the further out you go, right? If you're shooting 300-yard F class, it's kind of closer to shooting bench rest. If you're shooting 1,000-yard F class, it's actually more like what we do all the time with the 22s. Wind is your game. You actually don't have to have, we were just talking about this last weekend with the guys I shoot with. If you shoot 1,000-yard F class, yes, those guys spend a lot of time on load development and making sure that they've got, a really tight group and gun. But realistically, that whole game, if you want to win, is wind. Because at 1,000 yards, they're shooting, well, it's like Palma, 308. They have pretty significant amounts of wind at that distance. And then we get down to precision rifle, which is, our discipline. And I do think it's pretty darn close to being 50-50, because you need, here we can start over here. We do need high levels of precision, right? If you want to hit, a KYL, the smallest KYL, quarter inch, somewhere between 35 and 50 meters. But we are limited by positional stability. And limited by Rick's muffler, because everybody just loved that stage so much. But so that being said, our precision is sort of limited most of the time to some degree or another, to a varying degree. But we also need really good accuracy because, we do, one of the stages that we had at the Western finale here this year, we had little 4-inch triangles, which I actually looked at the math on it, Rick, and in retrospect, I was like, because I remember we put those out and we're like, it's not fair. Did we put the 4 inches at like 100? It was 145.
Yeah.
Well, the inscribed circle is like 2.3 inches, I think. Like if you discount like these little bits. So you need to have really good accuracy. You need to center your group up, right? It doesn't matter if you're going to punch a little group over here like this.
Right.
If you can't center that up and get that bang on in the middle of that triangle, right? So a little bit more to this point here. Positional stability puts a practical cap on precision. So even if the gun's capable of more, and I know we all want more precision, right? I mean, you always want to, do more ammo testing and, get your groups tighter. I'm not going to try and say that like, oh, well, I don't care about precision and we don't need that. Like we do. But I guess the question that everyone needs to ask when you're looking at what's kind of like, what's the next thing that can help you perform better? I guess would be a good way to look at it, right? Because we're all at different points in our training and our development, is what's going to like unblock the next step for you. And I'd say like most of the time, I feel like it's not precision. Even because even the most like green, guys that bring production rifles out, most of them are plenty accurate. Yeah, there might be a few lemons on the line, but like a lot of production guns are plenty precise to hit even pretty small targets, and in the right lens.
Well, I mean, I know Tony Norman's on here. He shot a Tika T1X at the finals this year and came in tied for 3rd overall.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And that illustrates the point perfectly. Our discipline really limits us in that the precision potential of the system has more to do. There's more factors that play into it than just the rifle, right?
Correct.
So this is this kind of like vicious cycle that I kind of wrote up, right? It's kind of the cycle of precision and positional stability. I guess you could look at it like this. So we shoot steel, right? We don't shoot paper. So our points are not actually based on like, were we a little bit more accurate than the next guy? It's hit or no hit, right? So it's either going to be an impact or no impact. So precision is important, but it's only really important up to the point where the rifle can comfortably hit basically until it can comfortably hit the targets that we put out. So if you were to, like, say, slap your gun in a vise on the bench and just point it at the target, and you had a no-win day, if that gun can hit that target, all the way down, and I'm betting most of them can, all the way down to, this might be a little bit small, 0.3 of a mil, but let's say your gun can hit a 0.5 mil target. Most of them probably can. At that point, you've kind of, you don't actually really need much more precision. So we shoot off of a bipod to achieve, I guess that would be like sort of the pinnacle of our precision potential. Yeah. But the rest of the time, it's important to remember that our body and, like, our whole physical system creates what is the actual precision potential.
Right.
So like, you don't get to walk up to the line and throw your gun in a vise and say, well, I'm ready to go. All right. You've got to shoulder it correctly and pull the trigger correctly. And, remember not to jerk the trigger. And then also, Rick throws everyone for a loop and gives you a standing unsupported stage. And, these are all things you have to take into account. So the precision potential is kind of, it is limited. So the precision potential can never be fully realized unless, I guess you could say, unless we're on a stage that's shot off of a bipod. Maybe then you could say that the rifle's potential is is fully realized sometimes. But then again, it doesn't matter because, and we're back to point number one here, we shoot steel. So, even if you're shooting, like, the whole point of this is you're shooting a tiny, tiny little group here in the middle of this IPSC. Nobody knows that because it was all just impacts. Right?
Yep.
So that kind of brings me to, I had something I was going to say about this, but I can't freaking remember what it was. But so that anyways, that kind of brought me to the point where I was thinking, okay, so we know what accuracy and precision are. We know how they play a part. So what are the things that let's quantify what affects our accuracy and what affects our precision. And then we can look at maybe how we could influence, the overall performance of the system, right? If we understand what effects things have on either precision or accuracy, we can say, oh, okay, maybe accuracy is what's holding me back from performing better. These are the things I could work on. So, as you see here, a lot of the elements have some aspect that affect either, but the question is kind of how much do they affect them? So let's kind of talk a little bit about each of them. Let's go from least to greatest. I think I'll put them in the order, I guess, that I would put them personally. So here we have, like, probably, I guess, honestly, at the bottom, I would say, even though it's the thing that everybody loves to talk the most about, is probably gear. Like we said, Tony's out there placing third with a stock T1X. That right there is a great illustration of, gear plays into precision, but, like, how much? That, like, it only plays one part of it, right? So it's not that it's not important and that it can't be improved. It can. The question is, how much is that really affecting our precision, right? So what I'm kind of proposing is that it's just a small portion. Maybe it's a quarter. Maybe it's 20% of our overall precision potential. Then we have ammo, right? Because the one thing, I mean, I'm sure anyone listening that listens regularly to the podcast knows ammo testing is super important, right? You can't just throw any old ammo in any gun and expect it's going to perform great. It might if you throw any ammo in any gun, it might perform anywhere between, I don't know, John, what do you think? Average and crappy?
Depends on the ammo. Seldom do you see a high quality ammo perform crappy in anything.
That's true, actually. That is true.
If you take any mid-range ammo and you shoot it in any mid-range rifle, you can't expect good results.
Yeah. Yep, that is true. That is true. So there's a factor of this that does have a little bit to do with kind of, we can't deny that one aspect of this is what are you willing to spend on it? That's for sure. Yeah, because John's definitely right. Yeah. If you put high quality ammo in just about anything, I'd say I would agree with that. Chances are it's going to perform anywhere from average to pretty decent in most guns. Because that's what you get for your money, right? You get consistency. So
and especially when we're comparing the accuracy and precision, like in this topic right here, mid-range ammo, mid-range rifle, mid-range results, does it matter? Well, your accuracy results are probably on the poor end, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, true. You mean accuracy and repeatability of the ammo itself, or like of your whole system?
Well, I just I spreadsheets, right? And if I compare my results between multiple rifles, and let's say, like my Ruger, it shot 0.7 to 0.8 inch 5-shot groups at 50 yards with the ammo, 0.797 to be precise, on average. And so when I go and look at my standing and kneeling, my standing was actually basically the same, 0.816, kneeling 0.971. So those numbers are slightly larger. The question is, if I grab a rifle that shoots half the group size prone, am I going to have half the group size standing and kneeling? No, you will not, unless your skill level has changed in there. So in this discussion, absolutely, I'm on side.
Yeah, 100%. What I was going to say, I remembered while you were saying that, if you want to know a little bit more about how much pure, like when I say pure rifle precision, what I mean is like it's the theoretical precision that we kind of all dream about. Like if you put your gun in a vise and you have absolutely zero influence on the rifle moving or doing anything, that's what I mean by pure rifle precision. If you do want to know a little bit more about how much rifle precision affects results, it's a few bucks for sure, but there's some discussions about it in some of the Brian Litz books. The software that they have can do something called a WES analysis, and I believe it's the Weapon Employment Zone. And it's super interesting. It's basically it's a simple statistical modeler, and it basically generates random groups using input parameters. And one of the things you can tell it is, hey, I've got a 1 MOA gun, or hey, I've got a I've got a quarter MOA gun. How much does this affect the percent chance that I'm going to hit a target that's say a 6-inch target at 300 meters? And if you want to know a little bit more about that, take a look at the WES analysis, because it basically Brian Litz would back me up in saying that there's definitely a point of where you're going to go beyond any reasonable return. Once you exceed, let's say, typically I'd say it'd be fair to say once you're beyond having a gun that can comfortably shoot 1 MOA, or maybe a little bit better than 1 MOA. Or so I guess if we're in mil, that would be 0.3 mil or 0.33 or something. Anyways, there's a question from Dave. Dave is saying, where do you place mental discipline? So we'll start. I'm kind of moving a little bit. I'm kind of going from outside to in here because I put the most important stuff in the middle. But where would I place mental discipline? Like I kind of would personally put that sort of in the same bracket as positional stability, because like I mean, that's kind of a whole other topic, mental discipline. And, I've started doing a little bit of reading on that stuff. And I know that's sort of the domain of folks like Linda Miller and Keith and those folks. There's some other good reading on it as well. I picked up a book from Asmir, from it was some book written by some German folks that they're all Olympic shooters and talking about mental discipline. And I think realistically, as it applies to our discipline, like PRS, mental discipline really has a lot to do with how stable can you be, and also it has a lot to do with I guess I'll just say I think it really fits a lot. If you want to boil it down in a technical sense, I think it fits into trigger control, because there's a certain level beyond which you can only be like so stable on certain props, right? So then at that point, if we're talking about better performance, what we're talking about is trigger timing, right? Can you release the shot when your crosshairs are at the right point in relation to the bullseye, right? And that's what all those Olympic folks are doing, right? You're standing there, arm outstretched with shooting any of those types of pistol disciplines. Well, they're not supported. They're not, they don't have the ability to sort of let the rifle settle in and just do its thing. They're constantly watching, where is their point of aim in relation to the bullseye and releasing the trigger at the right time. So I don't know. For me, I would put mental discipline's a little bit more nebulous, I think, because it has to do, in the greater sense, it has to do with like your whole match. And there's that, right? Can you like come back from a mistake? But as it comes to like, let's say that's like the macro application of it, then we have like the micro application, which would be like, yeah, things like trigger control. Can you release the trigger at the right time for that single shot? And then can you do it next time too? So I guess that's where I would put mental discipline. So then we have our other three big factors here. So we talked a little bit about gear and ammo. Then these three, I think, are a little bit bigger. They're increasing in influence, let's say. So then we have dope. So dope, I'm using it in the all-encompassing sense of like getting velocity for your ammo. So ammo testing, when I say ammo over here, I more mean ammo selection. So like you have tested ammo and you've checked out your group sizes and you know what performs nicely in your gun. Then there's the other side to ammo, which would be data collection, which, John would know all about. And any of us who have done this for a while know it's one of the more important things is getting the right data for all of your ammo. So dope is probably the largest factor to do with your accuracy, because again, you can punch a tiny, tiny little group, but it doesn't matter if it's off target. So if you have the wrong muzzle velocity and your Kestrel has you, half a mil below the target, doesn't matter if you punch a tiny group. So dope is probably the largest factor in our accuracy, I'd say. I think for most of the time, that would be pretty true. So
definitely for people starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an interesting point. And I think kind of, I definitely, that alludes to something that I didn't really write much in the notes about, but how let's say like how thick these lines are and how much things contribute to each of these factors as you progress, I think changes. I'm noticing it has a little bit for me, so that's a really, really good point, John. When you're starting out, it's a really good example was the first, target that I got. I remember that day when we were shooting this 6-inch target at whatever, 50 on 100. My brother's rifle, for all intents and purposes, our rifles were, let's say, comparable at the time, right? He's got a 10-22 or a Dalask rifle, and I got the CZ 457. I was bone stock at the time. He was hammering the target, and I could pick up his rifle and hammer the target, but we tried my rifle on it, same ammo, couldn't hit it. what was now in retro at the time, we're sitting there scratching our heads going, what the hell's going on, right? We're thinking, oh, we got the right number. We plugged in the muzzle velocity on the box. Well, little did we know at the time that, we didn't have a lab radar, and we didn't have any of that sort of fancy stuff. So the biggest factor for us at that time was we had the wrong data. We didn't have the right muzzle velocity, and we actually found out later in retrospect. It was kind of nice to validate this at a later time. The muzzle velocity on the box for that particular ammo, I think they were just like some high velocity. They're like a hollow point, like a hunting ammo. It was just about spot on in my brother's rifle. It was super close to being bang on. In my rifle, it was way, way off. So when you're starting out, you don't have a chronograph, dope's going to be a huge factor in your accuracy, just because you need to get all that stuff lined up. But then as you progress, and I know this, I've started noticing this shooting paper, part of your accuracy, the factors that play into your accuracy shifts, and you get your dope hammered out, and you think, okay, like I know for myself, and probably John as well, and anybody who's performing, at a high level, we can pretty much count on our dope to be spot on. With, I think most people that compete at a high level, I'd say we expect our results to be within 0.1 at any time, at any given time, in any condition. So at that point, your accuracy, the inputs that affect your accuracy changes to be more positional and wind. And these are the final ones here. And the interesting thing about these is I don't think that these lines necessarily are equal, but they do affect both accuracy and precision. And that's why, I feel like the final, kind of like the final frontier of where most people's performance improves tends to be wind, because wind can affect accuracy, right? We all know this, right? If you don't have a good wind call, very simple, you're going to get blown off target, right? You thought you were here, you thought you were on target, but actually you were hitting over here. So that's affecting accuracy. Now, if you, on top of that, if you can't, let's say, we all know that the faster the wind is, the more it blows your bullet, to put it very, in a very simplified way. So the less that you are able to granularly inspect the conditions and say, okay, the wind has picked up, I'm going to hold a little more. I've got to hold a little further. What ends up happening is it has this effect where the less precise that your calls are, maybe your group looks kind of like this, and you have your two shots that are this far apart. As you increase your ability to call the wind and in a more precise manner and say, okay, you know what? I think it's blowing 5 kilometers an hour. And you go to take your next shot, you rack the bolt, and you say, okay, now it's actually picked up, and I think it's more like 8. What happens is not only do you get let's say your group center closer to the middle of the target, you actually are also kind of tightening the width of your group. So there's actually a little bit of both in there. There is accuracy effects and precision in there, which is, I think, once you get to that point where that's really what you're working on is mostly wind, it does get harder to separate these two a little bit. I mean, at that point, once you get to that point, we're talking about splitting hairs, as it were. The last thing I had on here, which I hadn't mentioned really, is positional stability playing a role in either of these. So this is the main reason that I think you really need to shoot paper if you want to improve. The reason why is it is okay. How do I put this? Trying to work through it in my head. Until you shoot paper, it's hard to know whether you are on target because you are here on the edge. basically when you're on steel, you don't know if you're on target because you're right on the edge or because you're smack dab in the middle. When you shoot a piece of paper, it's very plain to see right away. Here's your bullseye, and you can say, well, there's no on or off target. Maybe you take your first shot and your wind call's not great, and you're over here. So then you say, okay, that's fine. I had a poor call. I can pull it in, and your next shot maybe is here. So positional stability plays definitely a part in the precision in the overall group. How steady can you hold the gun, right? It's going to affect how large the group is as a whole. But the positional stability can also, if you have poor technique, things like jerking the trigger. Like I said, I'm no trainer, but anything like not centering up behind the gun, maybe pushing, either pulling too hard on the grip or pushing too hard with your cheek weld, however it is that you're doing that, your cheek pressure. Those are all things that will subtly push you in one direction, of the point of aim, or maybe down in the other. So there is effects that come into play with accuracy in that regard. It's easy to think, oh, well, stability is just how much wobble do we have, right? But there's actually effects as well that have to do with pushing the group up or pushing it down. And that's the kind of stuff that's like where paper really excels to see that, because once you put that hole in the paper, it's there. You're not going to lose it kind of like you do on steel. So yeah, that kind of brings me to this kind of like idea, of steel versus paper. So what are each of them good for? I don't know. I feel like we've kind of touched on a lot of this. I don't need to go through every single point. But the main thing with steel versus paper is there's definitely pluses and minuses to each. The big one, I think, is this point here. Paper retains data from every shot. The big minus to steel, if I haven't made it clear enough, is if we put a shot down here, not only do we say, okay, well, that wasn't an impact, which it is data in its own right. Like that's for sure, right? We know that we didn't make an impact, so we know that we either pulled the shot, or maybe we had a bad wind call. Maybe we didn't get that call right. But the thing is, once we walk away from the range, that data is gone. All we know is that it wasn't an impact. With paper, we can see, okay, these 4 shots, those ones are great. This shot was not great, but it's still data, and it's still on paper, and we can see it, and we can quantify it in relation to our point of aim. So this is why I'm a huge fan of shooting paper. There's some other side effects here. I think a lot of the stuff that I've got down here, I mean, mostly this is for me to like work through the thought process of it all, but a lot of these are kind of side points. Keep a close eye on your zero. When you shoot paper all the time, it's pretty easy to tell if either your technique is causing your zero to wander, or it is true, zeros can change if you get enough build up in you get enough carbon build up and whatever. Maybe your accuracy declines a little bit. There are some effects that can happen over time. Temperature, there's the odd thing. So when you shoot lots of paper, it's pretty easy to see, is your zero still on, especially when you average large numbers of shots. You can it's easy to tell if your zero's on or not, because I think it's pretty easy to convince yourself that your zero is off when really maybe just that group was off, right? That happens to all of us. I know a lot of us have done that. I've done that. You go to a match and you think, oh, my zero's off, and then in retrospect, maybe you should have just left it alone, right? Maybe that group was off. Maybe your wing call was bad. Who knows? There's lots of things that are hard to quantify, especially when you're under pressure at a competition. There's a couple smaller pluses and minuses on steel and paper here, but important to throw them out there as well. Steel, it's easier to place. So again, like I said, I'll be the first one to admit it's a pain in the butt to shoot paper, but I think you should do it. You got to have a backing board at every distance you want to shoot. So like, I know that's not easy for everybody, right? You can't just have paper all over the range because it takes time to make sure. Well, it either takes time to place a backing board or you can't place a backing board, whatever it may be. So it's easy to place odd multiple distances with steel, right? Just pound a T-post in, or however it is that you're mounting your targets. It's a little bit easier. There's also no denying that steel is fun, right? I think that's probably why a lot of us start getting into it, is like, it's fun to shoot steel. So, and so I have that here because as much as I love to talk about shooting paper and quantifying things, I'll admit it's super fun to shoot steel. And when I go shoot, we go shoot it. There's a big group of us that shoot here in Kamloops. When we all go to the range together, typically we shoot steel, right? We're not like going out as a group shooting paper. Though, I mean, that would probably be, that'd be pretty cool too. But there's a reason that people like to shoot steel. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. And then we'll touch on this a little bit in the kind of like last couple of slides I got. That I think it's easy to think that maybe you can't practice stages or do things that are a little more applicable with paper. You can, you just got to get a little bit creative, and I'll talk a little bit. I've brought into these slides I've got one of my scans. I've got a target that I shot recently, and I'll show you like how I set it up to shoot, kind of like a stage or a drill on paper, and like how you might go about doing that. Oh yeah, this is something John and I talked a little bit about recently, and just a random discussion on the group. With paper, logistical difficulty increases drastically at long range. It gets kind of annoying to shoot paper at long range. You get to 300, especially like if you guys that are newer and like maybe you don't have the perfect rifle and ammo combination. You don't have like a top 10% gun, your groups get pretty large. So if you want to try and shoot paper at like 300, it starts to get a little ridiculous. And like, I do shoot paper at 300, and I've my home range is KTSA here. So we have the berm at 300. So I'll put stuff out there and shoot that. But, you're putting out a pretty big sheet of paper, because this all comes back to retaining data. So if you only put out, a little 12 by 12 piece of paper at 300, and, half your shots fall off the sheet of paper, well, it's no better than shooting a piece of steel, right? You still lost all that data. So if you are serious about like measuring your entire group, I mean, like I've got sitting next to my desk, I've got like a roll of construction paper. It's like, I think it's like 3 or 4 feet wide or something. And that's what I put out at 300 when I want to really like make sure I've got absolutely everything on there. So it does get kind of annoying. So then kind of getting to the end here. A little bit about group measurement metrics. So when we scan in our groups and bring things in, there's lots of different measurements that we can take on a group, or a set of, essentially a group becomes a set of point data, right? And there's lots of different things that we can use to quantify the group. And I think maybe one of the things that gets a little confusing or can be a little overwhelming is especially for folks that are not quite as mathematically minded, is like what do you use to quantify your groups? I just saw Kareem talking about the wind teacher targets. Yeah, trying to achieve something similar. Right. I see what you mean. I think I know what Kareem's talking about. So if you have a wind teacher target or a truing bar, it's small enough that it's kind of a taking the opposite tact, trying to get to the same end. With a truing bar, for example, it's super skinny, right? Very, very, very wide, but very, very skinny in the vertical direction. You know that if you have an impact on it, that you are bang on. You're right at that specific elevation. So that's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't really thought about it that way, that like, you know, if you hit in the middle of a truing bar, or a wind teacher is like the opposite of a truing bar. It's a truing bar. It's a horizontal truing bar for wind, that you know specifically where your shot's landing, like in relation to your point of aim. It's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't really thought about it that way. So these are some of the most common group measurement metrics, and this is going to kind of hopefully gracefully lead me to what was my system here, PS9D, that I kind of came up with. So if you guys are wondering what's he rambling about here, I assure you this will lead somewhere in a moment. So probably the most simple metric that anybody. Oh, did everyone just disappear? I don't know.
Oh no, we're here.
Oh, okay.
Here. I was just zooming in.
Gotcha. Here, I'll do it so it's a little bit easier to read. The simplest metric that I think everybody knows about with measuring groups is extreme spread. There are certain cases where it's useful, but honestly, I don't use it much anymore. So it's probably the most widely known just because it's the most simple, right? You can measure extreme spread with a ruler, right? You can pick up a ruler and say, put the ruler between this impact here and this impact here, and we can say that is the extreme spread. No fancy tools needed, no computers, nothing. Just you can measure it, with a ruler. Oh, hey, there's Mark from the island. Hey, Mark, how's it going? So that's a big plus of extreme spread. We can measure it easily with analog measurement tools, but I don't think it's particularly useful for. I did try and be as specific as I can with the wording of this for evaluating average rifle performance. There are things extreme spread is useful for evaluating. For example, like if we just really wanted to know under a certain circumstances exactly like what is the furthest apart my shots are going to land. That is exactly what you're measuring with extreme spread. The issue with it, and I by no means am probably the best person to quantify everything about this. There's a really, really good article on this on, I think it's Precision Rifle Blog. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to find out. It is, yeah. There's a really good article if you want to know a little bit more about why extreme spread isn't the best measurement, and why if you really want to know, like places like the U.S. military, they probably shoot more rounds than anybody else combined. They don't use extreme spread to quantify the performance of their rifles, and so the reason for that is that it throws away a lot of data. Extreme spread is only telling us one thing: how far apart are the furthest shots, and then literally just forget. You may as well have not shot these. Like there's really, it has nothing to do with any of the shots except for the two furthest ones. So this is the main issue with extreme spread. Enter another measurement here called mean radius. Now, basically what mean radius is, there's a lot of alternates, and if you, like I said, if you want to know more, there's an article on Precision Rifle Blog that goes into detail on a lot of these other measurement methods. Mean radius is like sort of the next simplest measurement that does not get rid of most of our data. So what mean radius tells us is, what it tells us is what is the average radius of the circle that is inscribed around, like at our group. So if this is our example group here, this is our example mean impact point. So then what's the radius of this? What is the mean, the average radius from that point of impact? It's a pretty simple measurement. And especially once you scan something, once you scan target and you're using a sort of like a target analysis software, it's incredibly simple to generate the metric mean radius from a mathematical standpoint. Just the average, I keep doing that. It's the average shot radius from the group center. So the big plus of it is that it's mathematically simple. It incorporates data from every shot in the group, and that's the big one. It does not discount these shots here just because they're closer to the center than these ones. Okay, so that's the big plus. So like I was saying, I was very specifically talking about quantifying average rifle performance, and that is exactly what mean radius does. So yeah, I think it's the most easy to apply updated, I'm going to call it updated method for measuring precision. And then I know that there's alternate methods as well. SD of your X coordinates, or you can also do standard deviation of the radius. These are a little bit more like mathematically complicated, functionally very, very similar to mean radius. Let's do that. So then we have these other two in the bottom, and that's going to lead us into this PS90 stuff. So there's offset distance. Now, offset distance is not... oh, nice. Thanks, Rick. You got the link to that article. That's sweet. For anybody who is kind of picking up what I'm putting down on this group measurement stuff, it's a really good read. You should definitely check that article out. There's a lot of good info in there. Offset distance is an interesting one because it's actually not useful on its own really at all. It's the only thing it's particularly useful for is what it's useful for is dependent on the distance. So below or at 50 meters, and I'm talking for 22s. This would be completely different thing if we're talking about center fires. But for 22s, at or below 50 meters, offset distance, which is how far, but it's just how far are we from our intended point of aim. So if this is our bullseye, how far are we from that bullseye? Pretty simple, right? And we can quantify that in inches or mils. We can kind of put it in whatever unit we want. But the question is basically, how far are we? Yeah, Aaron was mentioning Range Buddy, an app for measuring groups. That's one of them you can use for sure. I've got a little bit about what app I use as well at the end. There's Range Buddy, and then there's also what's that other one that's on the iPhone? It's pretty good. Ballistic X, I think. So at or below 50 meters, we basically have minimal wind. I'm not saying no wind because I mean we all know that. I know Kareem knows that because when we were on the line at getting started at KTSA for the finals this year, a bunch of us were going back and forth on our zero check day, the day before the match, being like, "What is going on?" And the wind was blowing us 0.3 mils off at 50, and like all the rifles were zeroed fine, and everybody was saying like, "Yeah, the wind's blowing us 0.3 at 50 meters." So it's not to say that there's no wind at 50 meters, but there's minimal wind. So when you're measuring at that distance, you're essentially boiling down your offset distance to what is your position induced offset. So this is where things kind of get a little bit interesting, talking about what metrics can you use to examine different aspects of your training. So if you shoot it at 50 meters, or even I guess technically you could shoot at 25, even though I don't personally ever shoot at 25. It just feels like, I don't know why, it just feels too close or something. Yeah, Kareem, confidence booster before the match when you're getting blown 0.3 off and still saying, I think my zero's on. Yeah, doesn't help. So if you shoot at 50 meters, you can be pretty sure that most or all of your offset is based on your position. Greater than 50 meters, your wind is definitely in the realm of non-trivial. So then we're talking about how far are you getting blown off target by wind. This is where it's kind of on you to do as much shooting and scanning paper and training as you can. Because I think one thing that's kind of easy to miss is if you don't really know how much potential positional offset that you can induce. And I mean, I'd be interested. One thing that I've been kind of siloed and I've sort of been kicking this stuff around in my head. I'd be interested to know, John, like, because I know you started shooting some paper. I don't know how long ago, but I heard you talking about shooting paper like last year. I'd be curious to know like how much positional induced offset you found at times, shooting close distance at like 50 or so.
If you should be able to have none.
For sure.
But your average guy could easily introduce 0.2 vertical. And that would be with a solid gun. With Ruger RPR that I was using, you could definitely do more. But
yeah,
just simply solid gun, poor fundamentals, you can do 0.2, 0.1 for sure. But you get that out, then there's you won't have any. Like, once you have solid fundamentals,
yeah. So I think that's why I do like shooting drills at 50. I kind of go back and forth. I can talk about this a little. It's like in my last little bit. I've got some examples of some different paper targets and stuff. I think it is important to shoot at different distances because it kind of shows you different things. So if you really want to know what's going on with your position, you want to shoot 50 or I feel like 25 gets really tricky because especially if you do shoot groups and you don't shoot individual bulls, like sort of a la like bench rest or Olympic style. Even with the 22, you get bullets stacking up and you can't, you essentially start punching a single hole and you can't really tell how small your hole is or like how far off the bull you are. 50 is I feel like for 22, 50 meters is a pretty good, happy medium distance for that kind of stuff. And that will tell you especially when you shoot in like low wind or average wind, it will pretty solidly tell you, are you inducing positional offset without a doubt. It's not to say that there's not edge cases like that day before KTSA, where we're all getting blown 0.3 off or 0. But most of the time, a lot of ranges. I know, like, I remember when we shot at Campbell River in 2020, there was like, at least at the start of the day, it was like 0 wind. It was like probably the only time I've ever seen 0 wind because that whole range just has these huge old growth trees up the sides of it. And it was just dead calm. So if you shoot in conditions like that, you know that it's your position that's causing any sort of offset. So then there's this last measure, and this I would not say is a simple or like a fundamental measurement, but this is here because this is what leads me into the little measurement that I created. It's called and this is covered in that precision rifle blog post. It's called the circular error probable 90 or the CEP 90. And there's different measures of it, right? There's the CEP 50, 90, 95, 99. What they each indicate is the basic idea of circular error probable is what is the radius of a circle within which we can put a certain percent of the shots. So in the case of CEP 90, what we're talking about is if we want to draw a circle, which I've got here in this little diagram, and you see I kind of extended the group for this one. A lot of these I drew, I think like 6 shots or 5 shots or whatever. For this one, I extended it out. And let's say that our group is 10 shots. The circle, the CEP 90 should tell us what size of circle encloses 9 out of the 10. Oh, I keep doing that. It's killing me. I got to keep my thumb away from the top left corner there. What size circle encloses 9 out of 10 out of our shots? Now, that's not to say that we have to shoot a 10-shot group, right? This is like fundamentally, it's a statistical measure. It's mathematically described. in preparation for this, I spent way too much time. I actually talked to the guy who owns and like is responsible for the software that I use that spits out all this stuff. And he sent me all sorts of literature on it and everything. And I was digging through like US geo survey academic papers on it and everything. Basically, for any of you who are very technically minded, what I can tell you without going into spending too much time on it is the CP90 is mathematically related to the standard deviation of the X and the Y coordinates. And there's some when you start diving into it, I mean, there's some wild stuff that probably most people would find very boring. The calculation has to do with like, is this actually circular or is it elliptical in nature? There's lots of other stuff that goes into the calculation, none of which is important for us. But on a basic level, what it just means is what size circle fits 9 out of 10 of our shots. And I think that's an idea that most people could pretty easily understand. So what size circular plate could I go 9 for 10 on, assuming I center it up? So I've this offset distance we were just discussing, mathematically, it's referred to as bias. Most of the calculations of CEP90 or CEP50, et cetera, they factor out bias, meaning they discount whether or not your group is centered or not, right? So that's the downfall of CEP90 is just like mean radius or extreme spread. We're going to start bringing this back into the context of PRS shooting. It doesn't really tell us, did we make a good wind call and did we keep our positional offset near zero, right? So we can have a group with a tiny CEP90 way off target, just like we can have a group with a tiny extreme spread or a group with a tiny mean radius that's just off target, right? That's the downfall of CEP90, but it's an interesting concept. Hopefully y'all are with me so far on that, because basically what I did is I took these two measurements and I combined them, and then I came up with a name for it. If somebody's got a better name, you can tell me and I'll take it into consideration, but I'm naming it. So if somebody is, goes to the Olympics and
just call it the Bryson.
The Bryson, yeah. It just doesn't have the same ring to it. I don't know. I was calling it 9 out of 10 plate size for a long time, and I was like, that's such a mouthful. Like, how do you say that, quickly? 9 out of 10 plate size. Like, it's crappy. So I don't know. I stuck with their nomenclature, CEP50, so I called it PS90. So anyways, what is it? It's something that I made up. What it is it's a combination of the two most important things that we need to know when it comes to putting shots on steel in our discipline, I think. And those things are offset distance and circular error probable 90%, CEP90. It's a combination of the two. So it's what I would call an aggregate metric, and it represents both accuracy and precision, right? Because if you're around for the start of the podcast and you caught that bit of it, offset distance fundamentally is a measure of accuracy, right? Purely a measure of accuracy. It doesn't really tell us much else because it doesn't tell us how big the group is. Circular error probable is a pure measure of precision. And again, it's the flip side. It does not tell us anything about the accuracy. PS90 combines those two, and it answers this question that I've got highlighted here. Given the group analyzed, what size of plate would I hit 9 out of 10 times? And I feel like that's a question that people want to know the answer to, right? When you shoot a group on paper, it would be nice to know, hey, given that group, what size plate can I hit? And that's the question that PS90 answers and quantifies. So it's just a practice tool that I came up with this year to quantify my practice. And I think it's pretty easy to understand once you understand the concept of the CEP90. So this is how it's calculated, but I think the diagram does a lot better of a job explaining it than the math, because I feel like probably a lot of people look at this and they would go, nope, this isn't for me. I know certainly I teach as well for work, and anytime I put something like this on because I do sound for work, and sometimes I like to delve a little bit into the realm of math, and I put stuff up on the board, and students, I see their eyes glaze over. So I think this diagram does a little bit better of a job, and this is how the PS90 works. If we take the CEP90, that tells us how big is the circle that encloses 9 out of 10 shots. Okay, so that's this number here. If we take the offset distance, that tells us, well, hey, how far were we from our point of aim? What ends up happening, you don't have to know exactly how, but basically what happens is if we then draw a circle around that, that's actually the circular plate size that we would have hit 9 out of 10 times in real life. If we put a steel plate out that was exactly that size, the offset plus the CEP90 added together, and then we multiply it by 2, because we're talking about the width, right? We're talking about not the radius. So we multiply it by 2. That is the PS90. So that's the question that it aims to answer again is, what size plate can we hit 9 out of 10 times? So, I mean, we could argue minutia on it, and, we could have gone with PS50, but I feel like I feel like the 90 was the way to go, because if you want to know what size plate you hit 5 out of 10 times, first of all, it's going to be pretty small as you practice more. And also, I don't know, it just felt more appropriate. Like, you want to aim to reduce the size of plate that you can hit 9 out of 10 times. Like 5 out of 10 times, like that's not that great. None of us want to hit a plate 5 out of 10 times.
Right.
We want to hit it 9 out of 10 times.
Exactly. I mean, considering as a match director,
going for 10 out of 10, but anyway.
Yeah, true. But so then the thing that's interesting about that is statistically, as we approach 100%, like looking at calculating what do we hit 100% of the time. Anybody that knows this, right? Everything is normally distributed. Well, the end of that tail, that's 100%. Well, that's way out there. Yeah. So yes, you are right, John. We do want to aim to hit 10 out of 10 times.
But the winners of every match bounce between 60 and 80%.
Yeah.
So the 90 isn't a bad number.
Yeah. I think it's a practical number, I suppose. Yeah. So that is the tool. That is PS90s. Nice. So that's what I've been using all year to basically, I shoot groups on paper and I scan my paper in, and what ends up happening is I'll show you what the little printout looks like. But basically my software gives me my offset distance and my CEP90, and I just have a little spreadsheet that adds them together, and it spits out my PS90. And it's really interesting because visually you can see. I'll show you a couple. I'll show you a scan that I've got, and you can. What I didn't do is I didn't pull in a crappy scan. What I should have done is probably pulled one in from 6 months ago, where I shot a group that was way off, and you can see that if a group is very, very small but not on target, so like you got blown off by the wind, or you pulled pulled your rifle weirdly, your PS90 is still going to be pretty big, despite the fact that you shot a very small group. Right. So what's the easiest way to reduce your PS90? And this is just one example. Again, there's so much that goes into training positional shooting. But this was just an example of how the math works given the same group size. So the example I put together here was, let's say that our CEP90 was 0.35 mils, right? Just an example number. And that our offset was 0.15. What would end up happening is we go 0.15 plus 0.35, that's 0.5 times 2. So our PS90 would be a mil. We could hit a 1 mil plate 9 out of 10 times. So that would be like a 6-inch plate at 150 meters. How do we reduce that? If we changed absolutely nothing about this rifle system, same ammo, same shooter, we literally just said, hey, center up behind your gun. We gave him a better wind call. We said, okay, you know what? I'll call the wind for you, and you're gonna shoot whatever calls I give you. We center them up. We bring this down here, and let's say now that our offset is, like John was saying, pretty close to 0.02 mils, right? It's never actually 0.0, but it's very, very close to 0. Our CEP90 is now, or sorry, our PS90 is now 0.76. So literally just by centering the group up, we reduced our PS90 by 25%. We didn't change anything about the gun. We didn't try and spend more on ammo, spend more we didn't buy a different gun. We literally just center up behind the gun, make better wind calls. I know that's easy to say, and harder to do, but relatively simple things that can be done without spending any money. And we've reduced the size plate that we can hit by 25%. That's significant. And it really is, like I said, it's simple in that regard. So yeah, the disclaimer is that it requires a solid 0 and accurate dope. That's kind of a prerequisite to this all. Like we said earlier on, if your dope isn't accurate and you don't have confidence in that, that's going to affect your PS90. So how to measure it? There's technically 2 ways. In theory, you could measure it without something like Range Buddy or on target. It's just very intense on rounds. So I've never done this, but in theory, if you have a KYL rack, let's say decreasing in size, so you have it be like a 1 mil plate, a 0.8 mil plate, a 0.6 mil plate. If you shot each of them in succession and found out what was the last one that you could hit 9 out of 10 times, in theory, that's basically your PS90. The issue is, that you need a KYL rack at every distance that you're trying to evaluate. And that's most people don't have that. On paper, all we have to do is literally shoot it, get the offset distance, get our CP90, and that's it. It's that simple. And the calculation can be done just with literally a manual calculator or a spreadsheet. So at that point, really all that I had left here is just what different targets I use at different distances, and just kind of open to discuss it a little bit. If you want to just give me 1 sec. I drank a ton of coffee before this. I'm just going to use the washroom real quick.
No worries.
It's definitely interesting how someone on the opposite end of the country, well, I guess we're in the middle here, but their thought processes and what drew them to this. So I find it quite fascinating from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. What I like is breaking down accuracy and precision, like for the new shooters or new competitors, trying to figure out, you almost think about us concentric circles going in, and in the very middle is, wind calls and positional stability and marksmanship skills, right?
Yeah.
On the outside, talk about gear and ammo, right? And that's first things you want to get rid of, and then dope. Once you have that, then the harder part comes in, where you're now focusing internally on, well, how do I bracket for wind? How do I develop a more stable shooting position? How do I develop my marksmanship skills? And I think that's a great foundation to build on. And then all the different targets that you work with is really centered around making sure you've eliminated dope, a solid 0, ammo, and gear, right? And just focus on any one of the solid production rifles will serve you well, right? And then it's just spending the cycles on developing a base competency with whatever platform you choose, and then using this process as kind of your your training ground. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's good, Bryson.
Yeah. So that's the basics of it. And like, I know I was keen to kind of, just like dive into what other people do. And like, I know, John, you've talked about it a little bit. You kind of have a system where you have like a grid and you mark where in each quadrant you're impacting or something. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, I'll show that once you've gone through how you do it.
Sure. Yeah. That'd be awesome. So I guess the one thing that I'll say is, like any measurement metric, none of them. So like, the thing is, no metric can be totally complete, right? So the most complete way to analyze a group would be to look at every measurement metric and analyze every single metric on the basis of like what affected it, right? So you look at the group and say, well, here was what was my offset distance, and I think that this affected it, and here was my mean radius, and I think this is what affected it. But the issue with that is like, it's difficult and time intensive to do that. So
Right.
the reason that this worked for me, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is that this metric told me something useful and told me if my performance was actually better with regards to whether I could hit a piece of steel or not. It boiled things down just enough that I could meaningfully say, did I shoot a better group or not, without having to look at every single measurement on that group. I guess that's the way that I can look at it. So yeah, like,
and just to address the comment from Comic Sniper, hearing people say that shooting paper is nothing more than turning money into noise. And I think for people that are just going to the range and just yanking on the trigger, blowing box after box, that's pretty much it. Like, no matter what you shoot with that methodology, all you're doing is turning money into noise. What we'd love to do is, provide a set of structured practice sessions that help you build on something, right? That when you go and shoot at a target, whether it's steel or paper, what's your objective? Why are you shooting? If it's to hear, steel ring or print, a group size without really trying different things out in an attempt to improve that performance, then yeah, all you're doing is turning money into noise. And that's the key is now knowing that you've got a consistent measurement tool here now. What are you going to do with it? That's the game changer. And again, it also, you only do this once you've limited all the other variables. Like when you were offline there, Bryson, I was telling John that how you presented the accuracy versus precision, with the factors coming from the left and right to the middle, which was wind calls and position stability and trigger application. I mean, those are the stuff that really is where you spend the rest of your shooting career in, right? Provided you've got dope taken out, you've got ammo taken out of the picture, and then you've got gear relatively sorted out. Harris bipod with a good game changer bag and a CZ457 or Tika T1X or a Savage B22 Precision, you're good to go, right? And the people that keep spending their money changing that up instead of spending that time on structured practice, I think they're missing out on a faster improvement potential.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Because we'd be remiss if to not recognize that, like, it is a hobby. Let's put it this way: it's a hobby for a lot of us, right? So, like, I'm not,
for some of us,
yeah. But hey, if you want to spend money on gear because you like gear, because honestly, I love gear. Like, I'm not gonna be out here saying don't spend your money on stuff. Like, we all love to have nice gear, right?
Yeah.
So, but just, I guess what I want to try to separate, or what I try to separate from myself these days, is evaluating, okay, do I want a piece of gear because, I like to have nice gear, which I do, or do I really think that this may actually affect my performance in a meaningful way? And I'll tell you, a lot of the things I think that people say will affect performance don't.
Yeah.
They don't. But that's not to say that you don't do it, because hey, we all love nice gear, right?
Exactly. I think, and I keep plugging Project Maple Seed. So Project Maple Seed is a civilian marksmanship instruction day. There are Maple Seed events that happen all across Canada, or we tried to have as many as we could last year. But typically they're available east to west. Hopefully, 2022 becomes easier. It's less than $100 for an adult, and there's discounts for this year, youth shot free due to Chantal Levine's gracious donation. Active serving military vets, you're paying $50 for a day of marksmanship instruction that breaks down all of the fundamentals, which eliminates a lot of that potential variability we introduce if we haven't had proper instruction or structured instruction. I think that's an opportunity that for less than $100 you walk away with a ton of knowledge that will serve you well down the road. So that's another place to seriously think about spending money on.
Yeah, still on my list of things to do. I couldn't make it work this year, but I'm still up for that sometime. I want to shoot a maple seed for sure.
No worries.
Just probably not with how heavy. I'm gonna have to put together a different rifle for it. This one I have is so friggin' heavy.
Yeah, we have loaners. We have some good loaners that work. And again, you don't need, my maple seed rifle when I started was a Marlin 795 with a Simmons fixed 4-power scope. That was enough to learn the fundamentals on. Again, the relative accuracy of most platforms are good enough to develop, good shooting skills in. Would you enjoy a different rifle? Sure.
Oh no! All I'm getting at is I know you like to punish us barricade bench rest guys, Rick.
Just keeping you honest.
Yeah.
They're called the maple seed stages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all know the ones.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah. So basically, when you shoot paper, it really is as simple as that. Shoot paper, scan paper, and profit for the paper and printer companies. Good Lord, the amount of paper and ink I go through, it just gets kind of silly. But thankfully, Costco exists, and they sell printer ink. But yeah, and these are some of the things that I do on paper. So I've kind of come to adapt a set of drills. I had this this set of this article I read a while ago from it was an old one. I think it's old now by Jim C. He's he's a PRS competitor. I remember a while back, shout out to Josh Botha from MDT. I remember he posted about it, and it was a good article. So a couple of these drills are from Jim C's recommendation. Then a few others are things I've pulled in over the last year or two. These are all different drills that you can do on paper. Craft drills. So that's courtesy of what's his name? Chris Craft.
Chris Way.
Yeah. So that was originally his doing, and I think it. So for those of you that don't know, basically a craft drill, the original one, it's funny. I ended up coming up with something that I found out later in the year he had independently also started doing. So when I found out about the craft drill, I found out about the original craft drill, which is basically this target is a big diamond target like this. And he had guys on Sniper's Hide. Basically what he was saying was like, hey, shoot a bunch of positional groups, essentially shoot at this one target. He said, I don't want you to separate things out. I don't care, what gun you shoot, what your prop is, but basically shoot all your, if I remember correctly, he basically said, shoot your different positional shots. Yeah, that's the target right there. That is the craft data target, the original one. And his system essentially gave a score based off of which diamond, I think, what was the largest diamond you hit in. And that was the craft drill. And then I found out, so I independently took that idea and said, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to shoot different positions at different bulls, and I'm going to aggregate them. This is one of the really, really cool things I love about On Target. And then I actually found out later that he had done that, and he created, I think, what he ended up calling the craft positional target. And it is basically the same as what I did, which was 4 different bowls for shooting 4 different positions. And this gives you so much more data than shooting all of the positions at one bowl. It separates them out and allows you to kind of blow out your understanding of what positions you are doing that need work. So which ones are negatively affecting your precisions, your precision potential. Because it can be the case. I know it was for me, certainly, like certain positions that you work, they affect your precision potential. Certain positions that you shoot may have tight precision, but they actually might have more poor accuracy than your other positions. So you got to split them out to find that out. Speed 5s is an interesting one. That's from the Jim C stuff. Doing 5 shots in 20 seconds. You start prone and basically you use a timer and shoot 5 in 20 seconds. That's a useful one, working on speed and kind of like you can work up to 20 seconds. If you can't make 20 seconds, it'd be better to start slow. And that's going to help you essentially forget about like sort of having to think about the fundamentals. As you work the time down, it will make you a little more subconscious about that stuff. Just doing slow fire, single position stuff. And then, shooting mock stages on paper, which you can do. And then, everybody's favorite from, I think the guy that was really advocated for this stuff a while back was that dude who does, wasn't it Primal Rights down in the States, I think? He was the guy that was really pushing this half-inch dot stuff. Another guy, prolific poster on Sniper's Hide, or Ken, I think he goes by online. So these are all things you can do on paper. And then, I use on target TDS. I'll do a shameless plug for, I can't remember his name, but literally it's one fella that runs this company. It's just him, and he made this whole software. And honestly, I think I haven't found anything better. The only downside to it is it doesn't run on a phone. You got to like scan your target on a PC. So I guess if you had a small PC or something, you could do it at a range, or if you had a static setup. But I think that's the only real downside to it, as far as I've found. It has a whole target library that's included. Any group stat, anything you possibly want to know about your groups, it's going to tell you. Importantly, for my needs, it does tell you CP90, and it tells you your offset distance. And the thing I liked about it is I quantified all of my measurements. The decision I made was I quantify everything in mils. So I don't, that way it'll tell me if I measure my PS90 in inches, it will always change at distance, right? So it will be a bit more than double each time I double the distance. I do it in mils because mils is angular, and what that tells me is actually what is the relationship between distance and what size plate I can hit, right? Because as we double the distance, the size of plate does double, but the mil relationship, well, it may or may not change. And then there's a whole bunch of other cool stuff that it can do. Auto scale. I think, what do I mean by scale? Oh, right. You don't have to. So there's a feature with TDS where if you use their library targets, you don't have to. You can, though. You don't have to mark a scale. So like all the phone apps like Range Buddy, Ballistic X, you have to go in and say, okay, here's point number 1 and here's point number 2. And those are in the real world that's 2 inches. And that's how it does the measurement. That's like the actual nitty gritty of how it knows how big was your group. TDS does that automatically. If you use one of their library targets, you don't have to input scale. It just detects it. No farting around, which that was a big deal. I like that a lot. It also does auto bowl detection if you use their own targets. So like you don't have to mark, hey, here's the center of this bowl. It has that all in the library. So it just saves a lot of time when shooting paper and scanning paper already takes so much time. anything like that, auto scale detection and auto bull detection. It's just, these are all nice to haves. So anyways, I don't have any affiliation. I'm not sponsored by him or anything like that. But if you are looking for software to do this, I'd highly recommend go look at On Target. He's a super nice guy that runs the company. I've emailed back and forth with him a couple times now, and he's a good fella. So I would give him some support. So these are some of the targets from the library and like what I use them for. 50-meter target, independent bulls for speed drills. This is probably the one I use the most for 50-meter shooting. It's just 12 circular bulls. And this is typically the way I'll use it here. I'll do a craft drill and I'll shoot this bull kneeling, this one, maybe a high kneeling or use something else standing. And then I'll repeat that. And maybe I'll show you the example below, actually. It's the easiest way to do it. This target, it's scaled on my slides a little different, but these dots, when you print them out, they are exactly 1/2 inch. So this one is awesome for 1/2 inch dots. Do 1 shot on each. And then maybe follow, if you have a 10-round mag, probably going to shoot 2 on the last one. So it's great for that. This target is great for 100 meters, has 4 bulls. I think these circles, they come out to be about 3.5 inches. So if you can keep 10 shots in this at 100, you're starting to get into pretty solid territory. And then it does have some larger ones here, useful for stuff like 150 meters. Beyond 100, this is the limitations of it. I don't have a large format printer, and the limit of, I think, what you can expect to be hitting all your shots on the paper all the time. Like when I'm talking about for training purposes, I'm not talking about the smallest group I can shoot ever. I want to know what size paper, like I'm going to hit it every time, even when I make a bad wind call. I feel like the limit of this system when you have a regular 8.5 by 11 printer is kind of about 150 meters. At 200 meters, if you make a bad wind call, you're easily going to get blown off, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So there's limitations to it for sure. And then this is just an example. This is a decent target that I shot up just before I went on Christmas break here. And so this is what it looks like when you scan it in. I'm just going to rotate it. It's probably easier to see. Uh-oh. Oh, I know what it did. Did disappear there.
We're on a ship somewhere.
Okay, here we go. This is what it looks like when you scan it in. And then I just kind of did some annotations so you can understand. So first couple of bulls, I just was like checking my zero. I hadn't shot in a little bit. Just kind of getting an idea what average wind call is. Shot off the bench. And then this would be like what I was shooting for drills. So this row here was like a craft drill with no part-time. So this bull I was shooting only low single kneel, high single kneel, and low standing. Sorry, the one thing which I forgot to say about the craft drill is this is the most important thing about the craft drill. You break your position every time. So you don't you don't go and shoot single kneeling, bam, 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 bam. You don't shoot 5 shots. You go low single kneel. Then you break your position, move over to your high single kneel, shoot 1 shot. Then you break your position, move to your standing, shoot 1 shot. So the interesting thing about it is it really puts a big emphasis on your efficiency, building and breaking the position. And that's why I think it's such a valuable drill, and why it deserves all of the praise and use that it's got online. So yeah, that's what this sheet would have been. So some no part craft there. I started working on like stuff for me currently that's like always gets me is like super, super low stuff. The things that they love to put in like NRL 22 matches where you shoot off like a little 2-gallon bucket or like a tire, super low kneeling stuff. So I wanted to work that a little bit. And you can see, for example, this group here, I definitely had an offset there. I hadn't shot some really low stuff in a while. So you can see that it's pretty close to center horizontally, but yeah, I was pulling the shots down positionally, and that's all me, right? And then I went back after doing those and then shot some of my more normal positions, but with part-time, just to put a little bit of stress on here. Yeah. So that's what you get out of it. You get your piece of paper, and then basically what you end up getting out of it is this sheet here. And this is probably this is the real power behind on target TDS, is this feature where it's called aggregate groups or group aggregation. What it actually is doing is it takes each of these, you see here that basically it puts a location on each shot. But what it further has the ability to do is say, combine all of these as though they were all shot at a single target. That's the most powerful thing about TDS. You can aggregate hundreds of shots, and you can actually export point data. You could in theory analyze 300 positional shots all as if they were shot at one target. And that's the most powerful thing about TDS, and why I think TDS is like the way to go. So what I'll do at the end of doing a drill like this, I bring it home and I scan it, and then I'll say, okay, for this no part-time craft drill, what was my aggregate group? And I find out, hey, look at that. Not bad at all. Offset distance is, 0.01 of a mil. CP90 was 0.3. And then the result of that is that this is the PS90 calculation I just did by hand. So that group had a PS90 of about 0.65. And then just for comparison sake, and this is the end of what I got here for everybody, this was the aggregate for when I put a part-time on it. So smaller group size, only 15 rather than 30. But there's two really good little points in here. One, my PS90 opened up a little bit. So my offset distance, I pulled a little bit off to the left. Could have been that. Could have been my wind call wasn't as good. The wind was blowing the day that I shot this, and there was definitely some wind going at even at 50 meters. But you can see just on a basic level, my PS90 went from 0.65 to about 0.85 when I dropped a part-time in there. So you can see how that stress can affect your performance in a meaningful way. This group was also, I didn't, cherry pick it. It just happened to be that way. A good example of why I don't use extreme spread. It's also called center to center, CTC. When I evaluate positional performance, this group has a better extreme spread, if you notice here, 0.65 or 0.64, compared to this one, 0.74. It actually has a better extreme spread, even though the actual performance overall, so when you look at either the PS90 or the mean radius, 0.18 versus 0.22, right? So I think we can all agree it's a less precise group, but by way of probability, statistical chance, my extreme spread is actually lower. So it's a good example of a decent example, I would say, of why I don't use it to indicate average performance. Yeah, so that's what I got.
Cool. No, that's cool.
And yeah, I would really love to see what John's got, what his system is like, because I know I've heard him talking about it a little bit before.
Problem I got going right now is the fans running, so. Okay, the idea, which, the craft target, interestingly, when I discovered craft, I had already started with my own problems. And I'll share my screen here. Share. Okay, so this is how my targets are done up. and it's set up on a 50 rounds per outing type of a deal. I track my cold bore, shoot IBI, you never have to worry about it. And then I got my sighters down here. So this will get me my wind call. And then my goal while shooting these is not group size, it is to keep centered shots. So I'll shoot 5 standing, 5 kneeling, 5 prone without breaking position. I just settle down and make perfect shots. This is the idea. But I will be changing my wind holds. Then over here I'll do my drills, and these are all build and break. I do very, very few timed drills because my goal is a perfect shot no matter what. I don't care if it takes 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. You're making a perfect shot every single time. And in competition, then I run the same way. So I've pretty much done away with timed drills. I do some sometimes, but I want to ingrain in me perfect shot.
Yeah, and that's why I'll say like probably 80+% of the time I do craft drills with no par. So same sort of
build
thing.
and break. Yeah.
But no beeper, no time on it. Just
And I used to do time for sure, but found it wasn't ideal for what I was trying to accomplish. But build and break is very important. Then, well, you can see on here there's the grid, and that's how I track my point of impact. And it's a real twisted way of doing it mathematically in a spreadsheet then. But the way it works out is just like my keypad. This here's box 1, 2, 3, and so on. And within that, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So center is 5, 5. That just lets me go on a keyboard without thinking when I'm half asleep and just bang out my point of impact numbers, which is a mess then for math later. But so I entered in here based on my rifles, weather conditions. Ammo makes a difference if I'm shooting cheap ammo or not. And then this lets me pull up all of my positions. And I can track, group size for 95% of my shots. So this would be basically what you're doing because I'm tracking everything off of center, not off of group size. So I'm looking for, and I'm doing everything in inches here. I only do 50 yards. I'm not doing multiple distances. And then my distribution, the center, if it's below or right, and you'll see in different positions, like standing, I track, trend low right. I'm a right-handed shooter. Kneeling, I trend low, but it's more just, low and horizontal. And then prone, there's very little change from center.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you've got your group size for the 95%. You've essentially done almost like a non-mathematical or non-statistical calculation of the CP95 is what you've basically accomplished.
Okay, so what I did is, if you got your standard deviation, you can calculate, a 95% probability.
Yeah.
I don't know how that it would compare to. It'd be interesting to take. I never thought of it adding your offset and your radius together to get your plate size. So I don't know how it would compare. I'm suspicious it would be very close to the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm looking at what is 95% of my shots. What is that plate size it's going to fit in?
Yeah.
That's what I've tried to accomplish. So I'm suspicious it would be same. So that struck me as really interesting where you went with it from a totally different being able to scan your targets and take numbers it'll spit out and find out what your plate size will be. Because that's what's been important to me based off of a center point of aim. Like, I don't care about the group size. Where is it in relation to the center of your target? And
no, and that's exactly why I went with. That's why I aggregated those measurements, because I'm coming at it from the exact same place. Like, I don't care if I can punch a tiny hole if that tiny hole is not very close to center.
Yeah.
So
we could bring this up again, like standing, a 0.3 inch group, that's reasonable. Build and break off of a barricade, but wait a minute, it's all over here. So it's actually kind of poor from trying to hit the smallest plate possible sense. And these prone ones actually, neither one of these are the hottest in that sense either. But this here would definitely be better. We got more odds of hitting that center half inch.
Yeah, and that is the exact reasoning behind why I took that. Like, it just so happens that when you scan it, the numbers it gives you does split them out. So but the system that I ended up, the two metrics that I combined arrive at, exactly, basically where you did, where we're not interested in whether the group's tiny. We're interested in whether the size that it fits within is tiny.
Yeah, exactly. In which I wonder, like, do you have a way to track then across multiple sessions, standing you trend low, or would you not be able to do that?
Oh, yeah, I can do that. So the way that I have it set up is I input all of the here. Give me a second. I'll just pull it up. It's a lot easier that way.
Yeah, because I feel that that's an important thing to be able to track for me personally.
Yeah, no, totally.
Less now than what it had been, but I want to know, is the position I'm building consistent? And you won't necessarily tell that just by looking at, one or two sessions. Some of these things pop up later over multiple sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me share this. I can show you this, how sick the obsession with spreadsheets is. Let's do this. Let's go like this. Okay, so this is where I input all of my positional data, and I literally input one entry for every single position, and I input a various number of metrics along with the position. So I input the date, the position that was shot, what drill it was, if it was a particular drill, because then I can compare. So I can basically compare like different drills, apply different stressors, whether that's time or whatever the particular drill is focusing on. So I can track that, the part time, if there is one, the distance, the group size, and then the rest of these metrics that are output by on target TDS. So like we were saying, or like I was saying before, the two that make up the PS90, which is what I'm using as my overall evaluator of performance, is group offset distance, which is this particular column here in the middle, and this one in the middle, and then also the CEP90, which is this one. So the 9 out of 10 plate size, the PS90, is just an aggregated metric over here. So what I can do to your question, John, I can say, I have a filter view set at the top, so I can go, okay, at 50 meters, if I just look at the drills where, I'll include it whether I had a part-time or not. Why don't we do here if I don't have a part-time? Let's exclude things where I imposed a par. And let's say that I shot a craft drill, and then I just only want to look at my standing. Right, so we can do this. We can go like this, low stand. We can just look at it this way. Over time, and I can drill down on this. And when you drill down to like single positions like this, the data set gets a little bit smaller, but then over time I can see, okay, my group offset vertical was in it early on, 0.07 of a mil, and then later on bringing it down 0.08, 0.02. And then I've had some, maybe I was a little rusty my last time I went out and had 0.08 or whatever. So,
yeah, or weather. Like if you're shooting 12-mile-an-hour winds and your barricade's moving, like I can group size will double.
Absolutely. So this little graph that I have on the bottom, the three things that I have on the graph are exactly what you were getting at. I have my PS90, my own measure, but then I do have the only other ones that are on this graph, because they're the only ones I thought were important, were offset, vertical, offset horizontal, and then just mean radius. And mean radius tracks pretty closely with PS90, but basically I'm just looking at my offset over time and my PS90.
Yeah.
So basically, same idea. Looking at offset as it changes over time, and what I like to do, what I've kind of paid a little more attention to than specific positions, but it really just depends on what are you trying to drill down on, and that question is just solely dependent on what you're doing in your training at that moment. I tend to look a little more at the aggregated measures. And the only real reason for that is that it's not that it's any more useful. It's just like when you shoot a stage, the results of a stage are taken in aggregate, unless that particular stage in competition only uses one position. But it's all useful information, and that's why this spreadsheet is a little bit overkill. I copy all of the metrics it spits out. Like I'm copying absolutely everything. I was saying, like, even though I don't use extreme spread, I still copy the number, because who knows, maybe some point in the future I'll think, oh, maybe I want to know what the extreme spread was on that group. Well, it's a number I've got. If I didn't copy the number, I don't have it. So I copy everything, and then I can always examine it later.
Yeah. No, I would do the same thing. You can never have too much data, because you'll never know when you might want it for some random.
Yeah, it's true. And like by the time that you think, oh, I want it, it's too late to go dive back in and find it. It's gone.
Yeah, it kind of makes me laugh sometimes. Oops. Like, how are you going to go through that and give me any useful information?
Oh, I know. It's the same for me. It's hiding behind the stock of my rifle, but I have a stack of papers saying it's about yay high, and that's just paper I shot this year, right? So it's like, how am I going to know which one is which? It's better to just copy if you've got the number in front of you, take the extra 10 seconds, copy it in the spreadsheet, and then it's there if you need it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
You guys are a whole nother level.
Having fun, Rick.
I know. Everyone has their own way of having fun.
Yeah.
But the important thing is for folks that are trying to improve, you can't. It's hard to improve without tracking. Right?
Yeah.
And I think what's nice is both of you have kind of traveled that same path independently, and that you're tracking the data that's meaningful, and more importantly, you're using drills as the way to push that performance, positively or negatively, but at least you're able to know that it's positive or negative, versus guys that just shoot papers like, oh, generally I'm getting better, but are you really? Can you split it out and say my standing is improving, but my low kneel is getting worse for some reason, right? And if you're serious about doing better, then you've got to put structured practice into play and track results and be able to say, yeah, it's the needle is moving this way versus that way,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or when you are kneeling, you're always tending to run off to the right. Well, why are you doing that? Well, you start breaking it back down. So it's my body position.
Yeah.
And your natural point of aim.
Yeah.
You've trained yourself to put your natural point of aim off.
Yeah.
And you got to train that back out.
Yeah. And again, not everyone is spreadsheet or database driven, so it's harder for some people. But I think you're showing not the limits, but the practical limits of what's meaningful for your game,
Yeah.
and it seems to be working for you guys. So
And
that's the cool part.
I think honestly, like you're saying, what John and I do, the way we approach it, it is kind of the limit of, I think, what most people consider useful. But I think more what I would advocate for folks that are just looking at this and thinking, okay, so let me put it this way: if you're looking at this and you're thinking, that's nuts, I don't want to maintain a 500 line spreadsheet, that's crazy, that's fine. Not everybody, that doesn't get everybody's jimmies jammed. That's fine. What I would say is shoot some paper and look at the results and actually have a think about what's going on. Don't just look at it and say, oh, a bunch of small group, that was good, right? Look at it. Maybe if you can, get a ruler out, draw a couple lines to have a look at, did I center my group? Was my group small, or was my group small but off center?
Right.
If that's the case, can I work on bringing that into center? What was the cause of that? Was my position the cause of that? Or did I make poor wind calls?
Right.
That's all I'm kind of getting at. And if you don't shoot paper, it's very hard to do that. You shoot, your beat up piece of steel that you've hit, 3,000 times, you're not going to be able to tell what group you shot when. Right. So get on a piece of paper, get rid of your ego, and it will rapidly, because you'll see all those misses that fall off of the steel, and have a look at what you can do to improve your performance in a systematic manner. That you don't have to put it into a spreadsheet.
But
even if you have a paper, like this is your standing paper, this is your kneeling,
exactly,
you can shoot them, set them aside. Correct. And now just work on those positions, shooting at paper.
And write the date on it. That way you've got a file that you can go through if you ever want to go through it, or if you want to compare where you are right now at the end of the season compared to the beginning of the season, say, well, which one needs the most work, right?
Yeah, and if you go out 3 times and let's say you shot, 3 targets or 4 targets, day 1, day 2, and day 3 on those papers, you'll end up with 3 papers with actually quite a bit of data on them.
Exactly.
And your tendencies will already show up. You don't need a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And again, if you're just shooting off the bench, you're not learning anything as much as if you'd, again, not everyone's able to shoot in different dynamic positions, right? Not everyone has access to prone or standing. Some, like Quebec, you're locked down to the bench on outdoor ranges. So there's not much. You've got to be creative in how and where you practice, but break it down.
What your action ranges? Like, do you have no action ranges?
We shoot at the military bases.
So, like, to practice for IPSC or something?
Oh, IPSC, you don't have to shoot prone. So in Quebec, you can't move forward except for a few indoor ranges. So IPSC matches in my area they only move left and right. There's no going down range. There's no running down a path.
But could you not practice positional rifle on a pistol range at 25 meters?
No.
Really?
No, you can't.
Because you're not allowed to move?
Well, there are pistol ranges and there are rifle ranges.
But like most,
so there's a lot of ranges have the no sky rule. They've got the sky baffles. Some have the little window slots that your rifle must poke through. That limits your range of motion of your barrel.
Yeah.
So you can't even think about shooting standing or prone. So but that's at the ranges. Yeah. So you have to be creative.
Yeah.
Dry fire indoors. That's all you can do.
There's a lot you can do with that.
There's a lot you can do. Correct.
That's not to say that if you can dry fire indoors. I mean, yes, you're not going to get shots on paper, but
that's what the air rifle's for.
Yeah. How's that project coming, Rick?
It's coming along. I'm looking for scuba tanks to power my PCP. A couple just came up on the Facebook Marketplace that I'm talking to some people on. I just got to confirm with my local scuba tank filling place that they'll do non-certifieds. Anyway, complicated stuff, but we're getting closer.
Nice. I'll look forward to seeing that. And then, I mean, hey, if you could shoot an air rifle indoors, you can get a PS90 off of a piece of paper off an air rifle.
That's right. And then I can do all the positionals. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome. No, this has been great.
Yeah.
What I'd love to do is, so part of what we're doing in 2022 is setting up the Rimfire competition academies, just to get folks more comfortable in that match environment. So it's not necessarily for good experienced shooters. There's marksmanship and long range shooting schools for that. This is take the newer, less comfortable shooters and break down what they need. So your accuracy and precision slide basically covers what we want to talk about. Ammo, gear, dope, basics of wind call, just bracketing wind, and then being able to understand when you miss, what's your next step, right? How are you going to try and make hits? You're going left and right, you're going up and down. Just demystify some of that and talk about gear. What bag? Here's one bag. Here's one bipod. Any one of these 5 rifles will do you well, right? And here's Ely ammo to try out. See which one shoots best, and then we'll get into, the positional stability work. Do you know, which knee do you kneel down on? Do you even kneel? Do you just kind of flop forward, right? All that stuff, all that cool stuff. So hopefully that'll get a bunch of folks kind of up and running with a bit more confidence and a bit more structure behind not only their approach to shooting matches, but practicing to shoot matches, which is the most important thing. So this kind of puts a nice wrapper around what they can do in their non-competitive days, right?
Yeah.
So this has been awesome, Bryson.
Yeah.
And clearly it's working out for you so far.
Yeah, we'll see how this year goes. I'm super excited for this year. This year is looking like it's going to be a really good year for 22 competition.
Yeah. Well, there's tons of opportunities, which is great.
Yeah.
And then we'll try and make that national week happen right after that local match there, so people can do 2 birds, 1 stone, or like 8 birds and 1 stone.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll keep that conversation going after the podcast for sure. We should get that hammered down, and because I know I can't be the only person that's trying to figure out my match calendar.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll get it going. So
yeah,
awesome. Well, thanks, Bryson. Any parting words?
Get out there and shoot some paper.
Get out there and shoot, and then you're working on setting up some CRPS matches in your region, which is awesome, with some other folks. So that's going to be things to look forward to.
Yeah, in BC we'll have. I'm just trying to get confirmation on dates. Everything takes a little more time, I think, than I would like, but we tentatively, so no promises on dates yet. But we're looking at a 1 day. Hopefully at KTSA, hoping for 1 day, and that'd be earlier in the season. And then I'm trying to book the 2-day Western Regionals in Kamloops as well for Heffley. So working on both of those currently, closing in on some dates, just waiting for approvals from the different range board and whatnot.
Cool. Well, we'll look forward to finalizing those and getting the season put down on the calendar.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, and then Go Big Tacticals jumped on board again as the title sponsor for the Sniper Series. So we're going to start booking those. Hopefully, get to Merritt, have one day there, which will be nice. That's an ideal venue for that Sniper Series. So
yeah, it's a cool range. I just got to one time last year, and I liked it. It was neat. It's a really good range for rimfire, I think.
Yeah. A lot of nooks and crannies you can tuck stuff into.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of stuff where like the terrain there is, considering that like we shoot mostly, anywhere out to maybe 300 meters. Yeah. There's a lot of different angles you can take. Whereas if it's center fire, you're kind of
you're limited. Yeah,
it's a little more flat rangey in that regard if you're looking at center fire. But
Josh makes it work. Josh makes it work though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Bryson. John, any parting words from you?
No. Time for a break.
Just shoot them. Yep. Well earned, buddy. Well earned. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess for the I just looked, actually. I haven't shot for 3 weeks.
Is that right?
Yep.
You know, it's funny. Last week I got back out to the indoor range, dusted off the pistols again. Man, I am rusty. It's been over a year. I miss it. I forgot how much I missed it. See you later. I'm going back to IPSC.
I just don't even. There's no interest.
No, I'll take a break.
No, that's not quite true.
Well, just wait. When the first Frozen Fingers match announcement comes out, you'll be dusting off the whatever
gold. Don't worry.
Whatever flavor of the month rifle you're happen to settle on this week. Who knows?
Yeah. No, that's what. And it was alluded, or like the question of mental management. You got to watch yourself too.
That's it.
You burn yourself out.
Absolutely.
You got to keep yourself keen, right?
Yep.
And
that's good. Good.
So I decided.
Yeah, self-care, buddy. Self-care. Ain't nobody looking out for you except you. Well, and your wife.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. Oh, thank goodness for that.
Come down end of February there. We'll start ramping up again, and
there you go.
Be ready to go for.
Yeah.
April's the first one in Ontario here.
Yeah. We've got our first one, I think, technically in February out here.
Nice.
We've got a BC PRL, like a NRL 22 match happening.
Nice.
Oh
yeah.
You guys don't get snow though. You get the low minus. You get the negative temperatures there, don't you?
That one's happening in Chilliwack. So there probably maybe a dusting of snow, but I mean it's been snowing considerably up here in Kamloops the last bit. But
that's what I've seen. It's been snowing all over the West. It's crazy.
Yeah, it has been snowing unusually, like quite a bit on the coast even.
Yeah. I was seeing footage from the island saying, "Whoa, what's going on there?"
Yeah, it was funny. We went down for the holidays to the coast, thinking, "Oh, it's going to be a breeze and it'll be so warm and it's going to be raining and won't snow." And we went down there and immediately it got colder and started snowing.
So, you brought the snow.
Yeah, I can't escape it.
Yeah, that's it. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to thank Tesro, Asmir and Miriam at Tesro.ca for supporting the podcast and supporting us shooters so well. He is our preferred ammo supplier in Canada and also our CZ crack dealer, Mr. Magazines, and now Loophole Mark 5s and MDT chassis and accessories. That's awesome. Anyway, that's it, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, shooters out there, for your support. Looking forward to seeing all those smiling, fresh faces in 2022 at a match near you. Stay tuned for more news on the Rimfire Nation Days and the Rimfire Competition Academy. We're just finalizing the sponsors and all that stuff right now. So we're still a couple of weeks away from the first announcement. But stay tuned. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate the time. We'll see you guys on the firing line. Take care.
See ya.